Roll call, Ann.
Commissioner Gandy,
Here.
Commissioner Butcher,
Here.
Commissioner Sanchez,
Here.
and Mayor Trujillo.
Here. Commissioner Sanchez will lead us in invocation and pledge
Okay,
allegiance.
would you please bow your heads? Heavenly Father, we just thank you for your presence in our lives. We ask that you will be with us during this meeting, Father. Things we say and do and approve of, may they be those things that are needful for our community and that you would be pleased with, Father. Father, thank you for men and women that serve in the armed forces, wherever they are. But we also want to thank you for the men and women that serve here in Lovington. Thank you for their efforts. Thank you for the employees' efforts, for everything they do. We ask all of these things, Father, in the name of Jesus, thy Son. Amen.
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 Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Salute the flag of the state of New Mexico, as the symbol of perfect friendship among united cultures.
Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion's first and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Do I have a motion to consider the minutes?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
I have a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Hold on, commissioners and staff report. Wyatt?
Mayor, Commissioners, just like to give you an update. IPR contacted me, the road slurry guys company. They contacted me over the weekend, and they are currently in Tatum doing some work, and they should be here moving in on Wednesday, possibly Thursday, starting on a couple of our roads. Me and James are working on the PSA. Should have it out first thing tomorrow morning with a list of the roads. Other than that, I believe it's going to be an 8 days plus a Saturday and Sunday, kind of getting in front of some of those schools and businesses and everything, so they're not interrupting. Other than that, that's all that I have.
I had one question, Wyatt.
Yes, sir.
Had messages and also someone from the crowd asking about how do they get to the cemetery?
They actually, I contacted, actually had a meeting with Ramirez and Sons and Lee County. Lee County is actually in charge of that project, and they said they will open up. It's actually for traffic going to the cemetery and the homeowners. They're just trying to keep the heavy traffic off. So I did contact Ramirez and Sons and let them know, especially the cemetery funeral homes, because they did have some processions this weekend, and let them know that they do need to keep that open, at least the one way for them. And if I need to contact them again, I definitely will.
So it's Ramirez and Son.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions? Here?
If I may, your mayor and commission, I have nothing new to report.
Questions by the board? Jaylene?
Not the report, sir.
Anna?
Nothing to report, sir.
Commissioner
This
Sanchez?
is going to be a short meeting. Well, I do have something. I would just like to thank our city mayor, city manager, plus all the workers that did do the pickup on October the 4th. Picked up trashes all over, and I had an alley full, I guarantee you. And they did such a great job. I mean, I was amazed, really. When I saw it, I couldn't believe it. So I just told James, just thank everybody. I really appreciate you for your efforts, and keep up the good work. That's about it.
Commissioner Bush?
Yeah, I'd like to address the city, thank them for coming out, for doing the wellness testing and everything, and for those that got signed up for our new wellness center. It's going to be an awesome facility out there, and it's a good deal that we partnered up with Lee Hospital, schools, but it was an awesome deal. Thank you guys for participating in that. That's it.
Leslie, Chamber of Commerce not here this evening, but I'd like to say that it was a good turnout for Thursday with meet and greet on businesses, I really enjoyed it and so forth, and I think everybody that was present enjoyed it. So I look forward to the next one as well. Commissioner Gandy?
Hey James, over there on 17th and Avenue D, the city sign, I know it's not lit up anymore. I know we were doing something, but I just didn't know what.
Actually, we met about a month and a half ago with a group of folks, citizens, to talk about the new designs for the signs that we had budgeted. We actually have a graphics designer coming up with some of the concepts we had talked about, and we hopefully will have those next week. The plan is for our small little subcommittee to meet, go over those designs, and then we would bring those back to the commission, as well as have the opportunity for some public input, so we can actually go out to bid and get the new sign, get the signs replaced.
Okay, I knew we were doing something, I just didn't know what. That's all.
Thank you. Chief?
Nothing to report, sir.
Chief?
Nothing new to report, sir.
James?
Nothing, sir.
Patrick?
Nothing, sir.
Thank you, sir. Going on to public comment.
Good evening. My name is Carol Parrish. I'm with the Lee County Memorial Committee for the Veterans Memorial. And it's my understanding that you're still looking at the memorial, and I'd just like to say thank you. We were getting a little discouraged, and we just think it's a wonderful thing. These men and women have fought and served and for all of our freedoms, and one of our big freedoms is starting tomorrow. I'll just ask you to please go and vote. They gave their all for that, and that starts tomorrow morning in the courthouse. But that is a big freedom that they gave everything for, and I thank you for the privilege of coming.
And I want to mention that the board unanimously put that #1 project for 2019.
Yes, the land acquisition is our first.
Yeah,
thing that we
we're
need.
still searching for funds and resources to accommodate.
Well,
that,
anything
but it is #1 project.
Anything we can do to help, please let me know. You have my number.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else with public comment? Okay, moving on to non-action items. James?
Yes, Mayor, Commissioner, we have representatives from the Lovington Country Club who requested that we discuss this item. I guess one of you all, or all three, could come up. Four?
He wants to be shy.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Kenny Wallace. This is Mike White, Kathy Truitt, Stacy Owens. We're all directors at the Lovington Country Club. We've had discussions, or I have, with 3 of you gentlemen about the possibility of y'all recommending for a petition for Sunday liquor sales again. It's been probably 25 or 30 years ago since that was changed. And the country club would, we haven't had an official vote of the board, but we've all are in general agreement that if y'all recommended a petition to be signed, if it did get signed and an election was held and it passed, we would recommend the club for annexation into the city of Lovington, which would grant the city the rights to their portion of the gross receipts tax and the property tax. And we would encourage you to recommend for a petition Sunday liquor sales again.
I also work for Navajo Refining. We have turnarounds about every 4 years, and we have anywhere between 300 and 500 employees come down here for contractors. And they were just totally shocked because most of them are from Louisiana and Texas, and they're shocked like on Sunday, where can we get a drink? I said, I guess you're going to go to a Hobbs right now. So that's why we lose a lot of business in Lovington for hotels and stuff during that time, because they stay in Hobbs for that main reason also.
Patrick, can you help us enlighten us on the?
Yeah, I think what we need to do is add it maybe on one other instance as far as a non-action item, so everybody has the opportunity to hear what we're discussing, the different options, whether we want to add it by ballot or whether we want to do it by petition. But I think getting it out there to the public is how we were able to get the first round of sales passed, and I think that's the most efficient and the most accurate way to do it as far as public input and understanding of actually what the process is.
So you recommend on our next meeting be a non-action item discussion of the
Yes.
either going with petition or the board, the commissioners voting
Yes.
to put it on the ballot?
Yes, just and you know, we had talked about getting some idea of the issues involved, you know, whether we saw an increase or a decrease in you know, DWIs, domestic violence, those types of things based on our first round of passage.
Yes.
And I can't remember the year that we did that, but at least to get that out there, have a full and complete discussion on it, and then look at the options that are available for the Sunday sales.
Thank you. Any questions by Commissioner?
So when we open this up, that means the country club and who else is able to sell it?
Be Pizza Hut, Alisco's.
All the restaurants in town
Lovington Inn.
that meet the quota, that would have to meet the 300 feet distance from any
Right.
religious.
Okay. So basically Darlene is out,
Pizza Hut will be in.
Pizza Hut will be in. So just about anywhere other than dry lines and pretty much be the one that liquor sales would be able to.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Yeah, that would even include all substances.
No, all already currently sell package, but this is just for restaurant. Currently, we are selling packages on
So
Sunday.
this is just for restaurants?
This is
Restaurant, yes,
drinks.
So that's one thing.
Restaurant stuff, yes.
That's one thing is that people are already buying Sunday, but it's Sunday package. They
Okay.
cannot have a restaurant, sit down in a restaurant and order beer. That's the difference. Yes, sir.
I do have that.
Yes, sir.
So y'all want to sell beer?
Drinks on Sunday, because we have so many golf tournaments on Saturdays, Sundays, and
Right.
people come, like I say, from Texas, and they're shocked that we can't get a drink. I said, sorry.
What, do y'all have beer there
Which
now?
we currently sell on Saturday. we
Saturdays
just
we
can't
do.
on Sunday.
We cannot sell alcohol on Sunday only. The rest of the time we have a full bar that serves.
So you won't be selling hard liquor?
We
No,
have
we'll
our-
sell everything like
You
everybody,
will?
like they do.
Oh, okay. I'm against it.
I knew that. I think we all do. It's made quite clear.
James, did you want to add anything?
No, sir, I think just following Patrick's advice, just bring it up for discussion. We can talk about it more in depth
Okay.
at the next meeting, give more opportunity for additional public comment.
So, I had a
Would
question
you
on
like
that.
us to attend the next meeting too, or
It benefits you.
do you know when it is?
It's October 22nd.
22nd.
On the annexation, how would that?
So, it's my understanding that if the Sunday sales option is actually enacted, that the country club then would request annexation by petition. So that means that they could bring in all of the properties surrounding the country club. It is contiguous because of our annexation back in 2015 with the land farm. The actual country club property is contiguous with our boundaries. The only thing, that could hinder that is, the expectation of having access to city utilities. It is over a mile, for example, from our wastewater treatment plant. So that is something to take into consideration is normally when people annex in, they do have that expectation that they're going to have access to those city services, police, fire, as well as water and sewer. So that is something that we definitely would need to discuss as far as an annexation piece.
And that, when you're talking there, just the country clubs, are you talking the residential housings in that same area? Or are we going to have some islands here?
Here we go.
Just so.
It's still, yeah, these pivots, right. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry, okay. So these are the circle pivots where we have our discharge flow, and then of course, the golf course, which is owned by the Lovington Country Club. But each one of these individual residences, that is owned by an individual.
Right.
So one way, I mean, you can bring in all of that property that's known as like the Lovington Country Club, such as the golf course and of course the clubhouse. They would own the majority of the acres, so what they could do is they could actually include all of those individual tracts of land as well and bring those individuals into the city limits.
Right.
You know, if they didn't want to be brought in, I mean, they could object, they could protest, which basically means that any of their property taxes gets held in this special account that the city can't use.
But they can just do the country club solo, right? Just the area if they so choose, right?
They could, yes, sir.
Our objective is not for the residential areas. I live in those residential areas myself. And Mike does also. Our objective is not for the residential areas. Now, if they come forward and they wish to do so and join us, we would certainly welcome them. And our objective is also not to achieve city utilities. That's not our objective. Our objective is what we think is a win-win deal, where we could sell liquor on Sunday and the city would get their cut of our gross receipts tax and property tax. Whereas the county, I believe, is now getting those, if I'm correct.
Yes, sir. Got anything else?
No, sir.
I just have some concerns about labor in the future, you know, what we're gonna do there, but we can discuss that some more. I just wanted to kind of brief overview to know exactly what we're looking at. So, thank you.
Well, we thank you guys for coming.
Okay.
And so forth.
Thank you very much for
Have a nice evening. James?
Yes, sir. Mayor and Commissioners, one of the things that we have, of course, is the 17th Street project, which I guess you would say has reached substantial completion. What that means is we still have some final punch list items. However, we've identified some issues where we do need to discuss a couple of options, mainly where some water is being retained from the construction. You can see that, and these pictures are taken, I believe these were taken about an hour after rainfall, and normally whenever you do have that rainfall, the water is carried by the curb and gutter. You can see that an hour after the event, we have water that's being actually retained in really just what can be described as a wheel rut. A little bit, sorry. This was actually just taken about 15 to 20 minutes after rain, and you can see that the water's not really being carried in some sections, and it's actually quite deep. It's within that wheel rut and causing some driver issues, and it's still being retained. This one was taken about an hour after it. So we have met with Constructors, Inc. We've also consulted with Pettigrew and Associates on what needs to be done to fix this problem. So from the engineer's standpoint, there's two options that can occur. One is doing a 2-inch mill and inlay in the northbound lane. That's what's holding the water. That would be quite extensive. You have some pros and cons with that, and I do have Randy Pettigrew with Pettigrew and Associates here to kind of go over pros and cons with Commission. Or this option, as described in the picture, is what's called a Type B inlet. It's not as invasive. It essentially will allow those ruts to drain. And when I say rut, it's not really visual, and you really can't feel it. You just see it when it carries the water. So we don't have a large hump in there that you can actually feel when you drive through it. The contractor has recommended another solution is diamond grinding, which they basically grind down the asphalt to eliminate that and to cause the water to move over to the curb and gutter. They have recommended this, and that is actually in your agenda packet as one of their options, or if there's other alternatives they're willing, because they've gone out and they've received some estimates on this to reduce those costs. But that's one of the things that we wanted to discuss tonight with Commission is these options, and let also the public know that we are working on trying to address this. We have not accepted the project yet. It's still in the substantial completion phase. until we get this matter resolved. And I would stand for any questions the commission may have. And if I can't answer them, I will definitely punt to Mr. Pettigrew. Yes,
You
sir.
said that they could grind it, so what is that gonna do to the water? Is it gonna seep down into it, or where's it going?
So this would eliminate, basically it would smooth out one side of that rut to where, you know, with the rut, you'd basically have this depression. They would essentially grind down one side so that the water, while it still has its momentum, it doesn't get stuck in that particular rut. The disadvantages that you can see from diamond grinding, it's kind of hard to see on this picture, but essentially you'll have grooves in the pavement. It'll make it look rough, and also when you drive through it, you'll actually be able to hear those the little grooves in the pavement.
So it's actually gonna just kind of script the road for a little bit. Is this gonna drain into our retaining pit that we have?
Yes,
That's actually
yes, sir.
where it's gonna-
That is where the water is supposed to move. You know, much like throughout Lovington, it's flat. With this particular road, there is a 1%. It's designed to a 1% drainage. So there's not a crown in this particular road like most of them, to where the water goes to either side, because on the west side, there's no place for that water to go. So it's actually designed without the crown to where the water sheet drains across the roadway over onto the north side. It will drain slow, but in this particular case, not all of the water is draining. And we all realize that yes, it's going to drain a little bit slower. It's not going to be immediate. However, with the what can be described as the wheel rut, it's holding that water, and eventually it does evaporate or drain, or it just gets splashed out over onto the curb.
Well, we didn't pay for alternatives. We definitely paid for a good road. And I think we need to go back and have it done right, because I feel like even if we did that route, you get a hard freeze and some water in there, we're gonna have some busted road, and also we're gonna be fixing 17th Street within a couple of years. That's my biggest fear. I'd rather it be done right. That's what we paid for.
Yes, sir.
My concern's the same thing with that much water standing in there and the heavy traffic that goes down it relentlessly day after day. Just the water does spray out, but it still goes down, penetrates the asphalt, breaks up the asphalt. So to me, visually, it looks as it does look like a wheel road, but it still looks like to me that the curbing's higher than the rest of the roadway. But you know, what do I know? I'm not an engineer, so that's my eyeball look at it. But yeah, you know, we want the 1% grade, and whatever they need to do to figure out what we need to do.
If we removed it, how much would have to be removed?
Well, it'd just be one lane. I don't have that particular graphic. Come on up here, sir. I don't know how many 100 feet it would be.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. We're anticipating if the option went to a mill and inlay, that you'd be looking at a 12-foot strip. And that would take you, can you go back one picture? Over here, left and right. That would take you over into this area right here. It would get us enough of the rut to move that out. If you went with the mill and inlet. Same thing with the type B. The type B would be placed in the areas that are holding the most water and allow that water within the rut to fall into that.
Can you explain the type B a little bit? Is that just like a dip or a low spot in the road, or how's that?
So this is designed as an inlet. So there's actually concrete down underneath it that would allow it to drain, and then we would continue out. Did you have to put the plans in?
No, sir, we did not.
Detail in there. So
basically, they would come back, cut that piece out, pour concrete in that, and it would be just you'd have a little dip in the road, but you would have drainage.
yes, sir. And that would, and then there would be a pipe that would come out the back of the drainage box and go back to the. I'll pass that around. That's a detail right there. That would go to the retention pond.
one do you feel is going to give us the longest lasting environment? And I know it only freezes twice a year here, but
So, you know, to be honest with you, the freeze-thaw concept wasn't something that we ever even were worried about. We're literally talking 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch of water. And it varies throughout that 1,800-foot stretch of road. That, I think it's 1,800. I don't have my notes in front of me. So, from a constructability standpoint, the Type B inlet definitely gives the water that's inside that rut a place to go. The mill and inlay removes that rut completely. So when I say that, removes that rut completely, the DOT specification that this was bid on requires, there's 3 different ways that you check roadway smoothness according to the DOT. And when a project that is specified to the DOT standards doesn't pick a specific category, it automatically defaults to category 3, which is a 10-foot rolling straight edge. So you would have a straight edge that's 10 foot long, and every 5 feet you're checking for an 1/8 inch gap in that 10-foot area. Doesn't matter if it's on the ends, in the center, it just doesn't matter. And you check it with parallel to center line, along center line, and you check it perpendicular to center line. And we have variations from relatively flat all the way up to about 3/8 of an inch in and out all the way through the stretch. It varies. Let's just leave it at that. And so the 2-inch mill and inlay has a potential of still having some variation to it that could still allow for water to rut, and for that rut to exist and for water to still exist even after you're done.
let me ask another question. On the, since that, on the Type B, that's a drainage, that's a graded type, what kind of capacity does that have? Because I know what my equipment that weighs, it's legal. I'm just asking, because, you know.
It would be designed to the same loading criteria that the rest of the road was designed to, that the existing valley gutter that goes across, which would be an HS20, HS25 load. Highway standard load capacity, 48 or 96,000 pounds. Properly adjusted across all wheels.
Okay. Just curious, you know.
Yes, sir.
Is that the only inlet we have there in that area?
That does not exist right now.
Is that the only one there?
Commissioner, this is a suggested solution. This does not exist right now. Nothing exists out there right now. We do have an inlet on one side that allows water to get pushed from one place to the other, where the road's grade shifts. We have a couple of sidewalk cuts that allows water to come out of the curb and go directly into the retention pond. This does not exist. This is a suggestion. This is an idea of what it looks like, what it would look like on this road.
And this is all on the south end, close to D.
Yes,
And
would be literally between the bus barn and the Lovington end, closer to the Lovington end
You
side.
know, the house on the west side there, that will eliminate that flooding of that property.
No, sir.
It's still.
No, that property flooded.
Been flooded.
No, sir. That's a totally different
That's
issue.
what I mean, so it's actually not gonna help
No,
those people.
we're dealing with water within the roadway.
Correct. And if I may, Mayor and Commissioners, that particular house, the flooding that still does occur is not coming from the roadway. It's actually coming from adjacent property to the west. If you look, the actual curb line is actually substantially higher, as well as there is a inlet there, I've got some pictures I can show you. The roadway drainage is working, so any of that flooding is coming from other properties that are not under the control of the city.
Got a question from the public. Ron, did you?
Yeah, I just had one question, Ron Price. Who's going to be out the cost on fixing this problem?
Once the decision is made, it has been rejected. It is the contractor's responsibility to bring it back in. And I think that there's another part of this meeting that we'll get into that. But right now, the problem exists as a deficiency, and it will be up to the contractor.
Randy, on warranty, on the warranty side of it?
Yes, sir.
Would that, let's say if they just went with the diamonds, just worst case scenario, would they be willing to warranty that section for a longer period of time or a heavier warranty than the rest of the street? That would be my, if, you know, so.
Commissioner, everything's negotiable.
Because that would be my biggest concern. If we went the cheapest route, then most likely I want a higher warranty on that section.
So at the end of the day, this isn't about the cheapest route. This is about which one do we feel like has the best chance for success.
And it'd be the right way, not,
So
I'd go with the right way.
Let me ask two more questions. How long is the tube to, if we milled it, what kind of time frame we're looking at? If we go back and put in those little drain ruts, what's the time difference between the two to we're back accessible all done?
So a mill and inlay is, with the amount of work that we have, maybe 2 days of milling at the most, and the inlay would occur within a very similar time frame. So you're talking a week. Proper planned, good weather. You're talking a week for a mill and inlay, and then a day or two for not 7 to 10 days tops. It's just not significant. And for the most part, we have a not wide enough road now to where the traffic control can still allow 2 lanes. Okay, the same thing. The difference for this concrete, you get to strength, sometime between, usually around here, sometime between 5 and 28 days. So once the concrete's at strength, then we could allow traffic back on it. So that could be a long term, up to, by the spec, 28-day concrete, 28-day strength. You could have traffic control around those inlets for up to 28 days.
What is your recommendation, James?
Actually, Mayor, Commissioners, we wanted to get this out and discuss this with the commission. As far as the course of action, we're definitely going to be staff are going to be having conversations with the engineer and the contractor as well, to where we get this issue fixed and the road is doing what it is designed to do and what we want.
Any other discussion? Thank you, Randy.
Thank you,
James.
Commissioners. Thank you, James.
Moving on to action items, do I have a motion?
Let me get one back up here.
One back there.
Well, we are ordinance 563.
Yep. Go for it.
Go ahead, Art.
I make I consider ordinance 563, ordinance of the city of Lovington. That's it.
New Mexico.
All that's still together.
Wait
Ordinance 53 and ordinance. Okay. That screen.
Yes, me.
You need to go ahead and do it.
Here, I'll get it.
Okay, here we go.
You got it?
Ordinance of the city of Lovington, New Mexico, amended title 10, chapter 10.04, Uniform Traffic Code, adopting the 218 amendments by reference, establishing a penalty assessment program, establishing listed schedule of penalty assessments, and repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict thereof.
Second.
And motion second. James?
Mayor, Commissioners, this of course is the final night for us to discuss and hopefully vote and adopt this particular ordinance. As you're aware, the state of New Mexico did amend the Uniform Traffic Code. The amendments this year had to do with including items or violations that are eligible for penalty assessment. However, the city of Lovington has not done penalty assessment, which essentially all that does is allow an individual, instead of having to make an appearance at municipal court, they can simply mail in their fines and fees to the court. So what we are recommending with this ordinance is to adopt it. This will adopt all of the amendments by reference, which is the Uniform Traffic Code. We have a list of the fine or the penalty assessment fines that are in the specific ordinance, and this has been advertised as required.
Any questions, Commissioner?
Yes, sir.
Question by guess.
I just wanted to see if James could explain and I don't have the number of the ordinance about the motorcycles.
So these codes, these codes, Mayor and Commissioner, are actually taken directly out of the Uniform Traffic Code by the state of New Mexico. So it particularly references like 12, for instance, let me find the one. Okay, there's some confusion on the one as far as mandatory use of protective helmets. It pertains to section 12-7-6 of New Mexico, the NMSA 1978, the traffic code. So if you look that one up, it basically, it doesn't require adults to wear it. It's the same as it has been. Anyone under 18 is required to wear those helmets. So you would have to actually log in. You can go online and look up NMSA, and you can actually look at those specific chapters. Our officers know what these ordinances are, but that's exactly where you have to find that list.
Okay, what was talking about the one that said something about driving on the divided highway?
That code is basically, if I recall that particular code, I would honestly have to look it up, but I did look at that particular one, and that's what allows motorcycles to share a lane and drive side by side, is what that means.
Any other questions by the? Had motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion for resolution 2018-99, award of a bid for the Harold Runnels Complex Irrigation System.
Second that.
Motion second, James.
Mayor and Commissioners, we did open bids for this particular project on October 2nd at 10 o'clock in the morning. Whenever we first went out, we tried to accomplish this project, which is replacing the irrigation system at our softball field on North Love. We tried to go through a CES contract, but the project was substantially over budget. So what we did was, in order to try to reduce the cost, was purchase all of the parts and components needed for this. What this bid does is award the installation. The installation of this project is well beyond our capabilities, and in addition to that, the estimated costs on it had the potential to exceed the $60,000 threshold, at which point you would have to pay the wage rates, federal wage rates. So we actually received two bids, and there's two numbers there. We did issue an addendum, at which this initially was a wage rate determination was filed under Class B, which is heavy equipment. The main reason that was is their interpretation was it was excavation. However, we've previously done projects of this type which fell under a Class A, which is general construction, because we are talking about a sprinkler system. So both bidders did submit. The higher number is, of course, with a Type B. The lower number is with a Type A. So what we've done is the apparent low bidder was Accent Landscape Contractors. They're the same company that did our Chaparral Park irrigation system. Now, the original budget was $85,000, and we spent just under $30,000 for equipment. The low bid, if we're able to actually get the Type A classification, meaning our net difference on the project would be $34,000. So actually this would, and this does take into account our next action item if awarded, we do not have to utilize any general fund money to complete this project, and we are able to complete all of our others just based off of our capital improvement fund, and it leaves us a substantial reserve that will allow us to cover any debt service obligations that we have. Our recommendation is to award this bid, contingent upon us trying to, or getting the Type A classification. However, in the event that we do not get that Type A classification, we can still manage this project at the Type B wage rate. The contractor did list a 75, Accent Landscaping did list a 75-day construction time, and actually our materials should be delivered this week to the city. So as far as a start date, this would coincide with the actual construction of our R-panel fence that we're putting around all of our ball fields. We were hoping to start that project today, but unfortunately it's going to be delayed by about a week. And that's all I have, Mayor and Commissioners, unless you have any questions.
Any questions?
We'll need to adjust it.
Yeah, you need, who made the
I
motion?
did.
Okay. Do you want to?
Yeah, I need to amend it, recommend awarding the contract for the project to Accent Landscape contractors contingent upon receiving Type A wage rate.
I'll second that.
Got a motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Do you have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make resolution 2018-100. Award of bid for 17th Street Fire Station construction.
Second. Got a motion second, James.
Mayor and Commissioners, as requested by the Commission, we did put this project out to bid. Previously, we did a request for proposals, which it was a qualification-based proposal. However, due to the Commission had voted not to award the project, requested that we go back out to bid. Consultation with the architects, they recommended that we just do a bid process. We identified 6 alternates, which the alternates are items that could be omitted from the project without drastically changing too much of it. So we did receive 6 responses. The apparent low bidder is Lasco Construction with a base bid of right at $3.663 million. The alternates, however, as far as awarding or staff recommendation to award this would be to Lasco Construction. However, to reduce the overall price of the project, which if you included all 6 alternates would bring it to $4.1 million. We're recommending that we remove or eliminate alternate 3, which is the video surveillance system. We would also eliminate alternate 5, which is the digital designs dispatch system, which is another way to communicate with dispatch, as well as alternate 6, which would be concrete pavement. The aprons would still be concrete, but as far as all other surfaces, those would be an asphalt type surface. So the original budget of the project was $3.2 million. As you can see, the low bid with the alternates removed is about $562,000 over. However, we can award this bid without any impact to our general fund. Reason being is the debt service requirement that we had budgeted for has already been taken care of by the bank holding that back from our bond proceeds. So that did give us additional revenue that we can actually spend for this particular project. So we have a larger amount of bond proceeds, but also a large amount of anticipated or budgeted cash to complete this project. So if you, and I believe I included this in your packet, if you actually look at our revenues, right now our budgeted general fund reserve would be 36.6%. We would have our budgeted with awarding this project as is would leave our reserve in our capital improvement fund at $397,000, and actually if you included the irrigation system, it would bring our cash down to about $363,000, which is more than sufficient to make sure that we have debt service coverage and any anticipated change orders that we have. However, as everyone is well aware, the economy has picked up. Our revised estimates on our revenues just in the general fund alone, we are looking at about almost a 44% reserve by June 30th, with additional funding available in our capital improvement fund. So to look at it from the perspective, I know that this is a construction project, it's a building, there's the potential for some change orders. it would take a substantial, it would take well over $1 million if we had to utilize any general fund revenues to pay for this. It would take us over $1 million in change orders to even bring us down to a 20% reserve based on based on our revised revenue estimates. However, if you even looked at, if we remain with our budgeted revenues, we would be looking at some fairly substantial change orders before we would have to utilize any general fund proceeds. So it's actually staff's recommendation to award this project to LASCO and exclude alternates 3, 5, and 6.
Do we need to amend that motion, Patrick, or just leave it as is, just take the recommendation?
I would just take the recommendation.
Okay. Who made, any discussion?
Just have a problem with taking 6, because we're going to put, in place of concrete, we're going to put pavement, and most of those fire trucks aren't that light, and depending on where it's at, I just, if it's that good in the budget, you're only looking at $140,000, you might as well
Long term, yeah.
long term it, and, you know, if I'm wrong, well, it won't be the first time this week. So, but that's, you know, the rest of it I understand, but the concrete one, I mean, it's not that much of the budget, it could be covered, but, you know, that's just me looking long term. Because you figure 5, 6 years, the equipment roll around, it's going to refill up that asphalt, and then we're looking at something else. So that's just my suggestion.
Is there any discussion with that?
Could we, like those alternates that we're not gonna do, could we do them sometime later, wait later when we get more money to do them later? 1 or 2 or whatever is more necessary?
Mayor and Commissioners, you could with alternates 3 and 5. However, with alternate 6, it would cost more to rip out and replace. So, and actually just running some numbers, we would be looking at, if we had to dip into general fund just to pay for the concrete, we would be looking at less than a 2% drop in the reserve based on the budgeted revenues, not the revised estimates.
Certainly.
Go with the ones cost same, or we could have it more permanent for a longer time.
I do like the idea of what Commissioner Gandy said about the permanent structure of the ceiling. That makes perfectly good sense. You don't want to have to go back 5 years from now and repave that.
So James, in the motion, we want to just exclude 3 and 5 only.
Correct.
Yes. So we had a motion second. Any other discussion? We had a motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a consideration for resolution 2018-101, award of second quarter fiscal year 19 lodgers tax funding.
I'll second that.
I had a motion second. James?
Yes, Mayor and Commissioners, Lodgers Tax Board did meet and we have submitted our funding recommendations. This one's a little bit different. We do have one event that more than likely is not going to receive any funding, and that's our Wild Bunch Fall Brawl. That is because the Harold Reynolds Field will more than likely be under significant reconstruction with the irrigation system. So we did talk with Mr. Gomez about that. He was at the Lodgers Tax meeting and knew that this potentially could happen, but as he saw it, it would be a win-win either way. If he was able to have the event, we'd have the event. If not, we're going to wind up with better fields.
Any discussion? Had a motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. James, excuse me one second. Lasco, did you want to say anything on your behalf? Okay. I'm sorry, I didn't recognize you. A while ago on the big thing. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion for resolution 2018-102, adjusting credit card master limit.
Second it.
And a motion second by Arthur.
Come on up here.
Mayor and Commission, we're in a situation where we've discovered that a couple of department heads were lacking the use of a credit card, so we're including a credit card for our senior center so that they'll have use of that for their needs. And then one of the other things that's happened is we've discovered that even though we have some additional credit cards we've been using for travel and training, we encounter situations where an employee is leaving, they go on their travel and training trip, they come back, and we essentially have a 30-day waiting period before we make payments on any of our credit cards. We limit our payments to the due dates, which is always once a month before, I want to say it's the 7th of every month. That being the case, during that month when someone's gone on their travel and training, we have a credit card that doesn't have a balance sufficient enough to be passed on to the next person that has to go to their training. So it's our goal to accomplish two things here. One, supply the needs to some department heads for operational resources, but primarily to give us the capability of keeping employees on their continuous travel and training trips to be able to keep going without interruption, simply because we needed to make a payment on a credit card. So that's why the limit went up to the $75,000 versus the $57,500. Do you have any questions?
So each credit card is going to now be due, what, $5,000 a piece, or?
No, sir.
That's what you said.
No, sir. All the department heads will have a $3,500 credit limit, with the exception of the city manager and the public works director. One of the items that I didn't mention is that with those two individuals and mine as well, we have some continual services that we pay for that are constantly charged to those credit cards. So for example, the web fees for the email, another one, security systems. And so those are always automatically charged to our credit cards regardless of any operational activities above and beyond that. In regards to, so those two will be larger. The $3,500 seems sufficient for the other department heads as far as their normal covering travel training for themselves, other employees in the department, as well as that occasional OG, you know, we have this need to get a new printer or something to that effect. And then as far as our training cards, I believe I put them in for $2,500, or was it $2,000? $2,500. And based on our activity and the average cost for all the training trips, that appears to be a sufficient amount to cover 2 different training trips in each month.
And that's brought back to the city manager, to James, if it goes over or if it's just right on the cutting edge of that card, right? He approves that final stamp?
Absolutely.
Okay.
If I may, Mayor and Commissioners, these are basically, well, not basically, these follow the same procurement process as us going to a vendor and charging it, such as like at Higginbotham. We have the charge accounts. You have to fill out the purchase requisition. It has to be approved. Then the purchase order is issued. The credit card is the same way. It's just it's not issuing an actual paper check. And there's just some businesses that don't accept charge accounts to where we have to use a purchase card or a Visa, as well as some of our our online purchases that we're required to make. You have to have that credit card. So it's used just like a check. We don't have a carryover balance every month. We don't pay any interest. It's paid in full every month. It's just, it's a plastic check, I guess you could say, instead of the paper check.
So what is your limit, what is James' limit on your cards?
Theirs would be $7,000 for the Public Works Director and for the City Manager. Historically, those were the limits. We had dropped them to try and allocate charge capacity for travel and training, and we discovered that that created some issues for both the City Manager and the Public Works Director, to where different things that they needed to do, they were not able to accomplish simply because we had dropped their limits to a point that was too low to accomplish our needs.
So do you all max these out?
No, sir. As a rule, we on average spend somewhere in the neighborhood of around 50, not even 50,000, I would say closer to 45,000 every month on charges on our credit cards. The issue that we're really having is the capacity with any one card to accomplish, as I mentioned earlier, 2 people being able to go on a training trip on one credit card. And we're trying not to give that person going on a travel and training this real high credit limit. And so this has been an experiment from the beginning in regards to having travel and training cards. And we've realized that we didn't have enough limit to accommodate the needs of our departments.
But your department, you yourself and our city manager, have you all ever maxed you all, 7,500 or whatever?
No.
As a rule, no. It's rare when something like that happens.
Now this credit, you're talking about emails and all that, it's not, is it for your personal use at home or whatever?
No, sir.
Absolutely not. It's against our state of New Mexico procurement code to use our credit cards for any personal use, number one. And then secondly, we're dealing with the operations of the city, and it is required, as our city manager mentioned, for everyone to have a prior approval using our purchase requisition process before any expenditures are made using a credit card.
Just making sure. Okay, of course.
Any other questions?
Any questions about the board? Had a motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make resolution 2018-103, authorization to dispose of certain fixed assets.
Second.
Had a motion second. James?
Mayor and Commissioners, one of the things that we need to do is, one, our old MyTel phone system. It was a network system. We still have those phones, and back when that system was implemented, it was added to our fixed assets. We do need to dispose of those, and this resolution will allow us to remove it from our fixed assets for auditing purposes. We also have the need to get, by auction, 2 of our passenger vans that we have at our Senior Citizens Center. And because of how these vans were procured, they were procured with state funds that are designated for use with our Senior Citizens Program. Any proceeds from that will be put back into our Senior Citizens Program. But this resolution will allow us to send those to the next auction as well as remove them from our fixed assets inventory.
Are these in pretty good condition?
We have a 2000 Ford, I guess you would say like a Windstar, is that what that model was? 7-passenger van. I don't know the exact mileage, but then the other one is a 2004 Ford multi-passenger van, which is, I guess the best way to describe it, it's like a shuttle bus.
But are they in good condition?
No, sir. They have seen better days. They have been used. They have been used.
Donating to Tatum, Hughes, or somebody?
Well, Mayor and Commissioners, I'm glad you brought that up. We actually, our first alternative was to transfer those vehicles to another Senior Citizens Program, but nobody wants them. We tried.
Wow. Good try. Any other questions?
No, sir.
Had a motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion, resolutions 2018-104, authorizing an agreement between the City of Lovington and Lee County regarding road maintenance.
Second.
Had a motion second. James?
Yes, Mayor and Commissioners, one of the things that myself, Wyatt, and the county manager, and the assistant county manager sat down the other day and we looked at roads that we have within our city limits and looked at the feasibility of coming to an agreement as far as maintenance on these. Some roads do need to be maintained by the city, yet they're out in the county. So the county commission did approve the county manager to get with me and work out an agreement as far as the maintenance aspect of several roads. In your packet, we actually have the verbal description of these roads. The ones on the left, of course, are city maintenance, where we would assume maintenance of this. Essentially, all of 17th Street would become the city's responsibility. So we have a section which starts from just to the north of Good Samaritan Nursing Home all the way up to Avenue D. That's actually out in the outside of the city limits, but we would assume responsibility for maintenance. There's a small section to the north of where the 1700 block of West Harrison would be, all the way up to the alley just to the south of Tyler, as well as from actually the fire station construction site that was just recently rebuilt by Lee County all the way up to Gum. All of Gum would actually become our responsibility, and the county is actually rebuilding that particular section. We would just assume maintenance. Then we have 9th Street from Dogwood all the way out to Gum would become our responsibility for maintenance. And then, of course, commercial from Van Buren up to the Tatum Highway. Right now, about 51% of that roadway is the county's responsibility. The remainder is 49% is ours. But we would assume maintenance of that road as well. The county would take over maintenance of Gilmore Road, which is that Caliche Road on the south side of the cheese plant, and they would go all the way out to where basically where the turn is at. On Stiles Road, where Miko Services is located, right in front of where our city property is, they would assume maintenance of that particular section of the roadway. And then over by the fairgrounds, Avenue B, which cuts through the parking lot, as well as Roosevelt, the county would assume maintenance of those roads as well.
So we're just looking at a swap agreement or something?
Well, it's not, we're not transferring any property. It's the agreement that we have attached that would essentially says that even though these roads are, out in the county, the city is going to assume maintenance responsibilities of those. It's just a better utilization of resources from both parties, and that way there's no, it's clearly who is responsible for maintenance of that roadway. We had an issue the other day, which of course we work very well with the county, but it was one of those, well, who is responsible for this? And this would actually clear it up.
Any questions about the board? You had a motion and a second. Go ahead.
Trying to figure out where that little bitty dot over there on 17's at. Is
This
that over there for the,
right here?
the island?
Yes, this is Link, the old Link Mark's house.
Yeah.
Right
That's what I thought
over in
it
that
was.
area.
Like fence.
Pipe fence.
Yeah, exactly where it's at. All right. No, just, I'm sure I missed the variance, right?
All right, we had a motion and a second. All in favor?
Okay.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. We have a motion.
I make a motion we consider accounts payable.
I had a motion and a second by Gandy. Commissioner Gandy.
If I may, your mayor and commission, we have several items that are of interest in our payables list, and just kind of giving you a rundown, starting on page 1.
Could you make it where it's over $5,000
Oh, to go
instead of every nickel and dime?
Hey, Commissioner.
You want me to just keep it to everything over 5,000?
Yeah, the $300 ones, and
Well, then we'll start with the Apple Incorporated.
The first one was $2,300. Is it a company it's not a continuing thing, is it?
Yes, it is, sir. It's a company that our wastewater treatment facility deals with and buying chemicals. They use, well, let me step back. They have to get testing for the compost that's produced at the wastewater treatment plant, and this is a company that provides the testing for them. But moving down to the $8,360 one with Apple Incorporated, our youth center bought some Apple computers, five of those, and 3 iPads for the new lab that they built. And then going down to the $12,417 with the BICI. Again, this is another company we buy chemicals for the wastewater treatment plant. That's essentially all that is. This is a little larger purchase because we had grown low on the chemicals and we needed to catch up. And then moving down to the $13,000 with the CES. That's essentially part of the Main Street Utilities design that we paid for. And then a little bit of work, a small expenditure related to the Love and Central. And then as we move down to the $32,000, we're near the bottom, getting closer to the bottom, the Lee County State Bank. We borrowed the 2015 Hold Harmless bonds. This is a semi-annual interest expense payment for the Hold Harmless bonds, the $30,322. And then some of the others are kind of self-explanatory. The $13,000 for the Lovington Chamber, and then well, it's less than $5,000. I won't even mention it. And then as we go down to the almost near the bottom, the New Mexico Finance Authority, again, we have a debt service payment due them that we paid, and this is an interest expense for our drinking water loan that we've gotten back in, 2007, 2008. And then the largest one, the NMED CPB, stands for the New Mexico Environmental Department, the construction program, where we borrowed the money to construct our wastewater treatment facility. And this is an annual payment that we make every year for them. All three of these are due November 1st. And then going to the next page, I figured P&D Petroleum's pretty straightforward, the $16,000. But as you can see with the Pettigrew and Associates, the $6,390 was basically related to the 17th Street reconstruction. And then if we move down to, gosh, I'm looking for something over $5,000, Valentine Auto. We had two primary expenditures. One was related to the police department for some brakes and maintenance on one of the vehicles, number 42. And then for the recreation department, they had a Chevy pickup that needed some major repairs for about $4,000. And then the Verizon's pretty, so that's it. Do you have any questions?
I was trying to remember if you covered that one on Jay's. My hearing kind of faded away for a minute.
Jay's Incorporated 23.
The one below it, 18,000. That was
Candy.
Well, it was less than 5,000, but.
No, he's talking about Candy Cane.
Oh, Candy Cane.
Yeah.
Okay.
For 18,000. What was he doing there?
Wells.
Yes, it's a well thing. We had to enlarge one of our monitor wells, number 5. The water department needed to do that.
And for a monitor, it was $18,000.
I don't know all of the specific work they do, but I could turn this over to Wyatt.
Actually, it was New Mexico Environment Department came and we actually have a monitor well that's right inside the wastewater treatment plant. And it's high in chlorides currently right now, so the 2-inch monitor well that's currently there, they don't make pumps that will pump for consistent 24 hours. And to clear those chlorides out, we needed to enlarge that monitor well to clear up the deficiency with the New Mexico Environment Department. So we actually sent this off to the state, showed them, told them what we were going to do, and they okayed the well to be drilled, and we got all the correct information and everything, and we had them come and enlarge, put a new well that was within 50 feet of the old one.
So that was for a new well and monitor all of them.
Yes.
Oh.
I got one more, the 8th one from the bottom. That the
And what's the name?
The Triple M Recreation.
Triple M Recreation.
It's $4,988.
Yeah, I've got a note on that. It's Triple M. I just have to find them.
It's on the last page.
8th from the bottom.
Oh, it's on the next page. That's why I'm not finding it. You know, our Parks Department, they keep wood chips in the playground area. That's what that's for.
Any other questions about the board?
Yes, sir.
All in favor of paying the bill?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Do I have a motion to go into closed session?
Have we got a closed session?
Yep, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to go into closed session pursuant to section 10-15-1 NMS 1978, subsection H7, pending or threatening litigation, subsection H8, regarding the purchase, acquisition, or disposition of real property or water rights.
Second that.
Motion second, roll call.
Commissioner Butcher,
Yes.
Commissioner Gandy,
Yes.
Commissioner Sanchez,
Yes.
and Mayor Trujillo.
Yes. We are now in closed session.
You're not the only one. Need you to take a look at that.
You might want to take that off. We wonder what the hell you're on.
Yeah.
Do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to go back into regular session. Matters discussed in closed session were limited only to those specified in the motion for closure, and no action was taken.
Second.
Roll call.
Commissioner Gandy,
Aye.
Commissioner Butcher,
Aye.
Commissioner Sanchez,
Aye.
and Mayor Trujillo.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Seconded.
That motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it.